Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of In the Corner. I'm Cash. Today is January 19th. We have got so much to talk about. For a weekend that we really didn't have that many fights in, it was such an eventful weekend in terms of news. We're going to talk about the fight cards we had. Even the fights we had, there's a lot of controversy. Alexis Rocha pulling out in the last minute against Raul Curiel. Jordan Panthen stepping in and giving it a great effort. Nikita Tszyu-Michael Zerafa, huge controversy there. BKFC had a great main event. But we're also going to talk about some other things like Vergil Ortiz suing Golden Boy, Conor McGregor potentially fighting Jorge Masvidal, Ilia Topuria talking about his return, the WBA stripping Tank Davis. Most importantly, Jai Opetaia moving to Zuffa Boxing and their whole launch they did this week. So much news and notes. But we're going to start with the one and only face of boxing, Saul Canelo Alvarez. It has been official. They've announced his return. It's going to be September 12th in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. And this is going to be a Mexico versus the world or Mexico against the world event. And it's also going to be the first event under the Canelo Promotions banner. So we know that Canelo has a promotional company. They've been co-promoters on a lot of events that he's done, all of his fights. They're on the poster and stuff. And I don't know if they have any other fighters, but I'm guessing that as we get to the end of his career, he's making more money. They're going to really start to launch Canelo Promotions, and he's going to, try and actually do something in the promotional and business side as opposed to just being a fighter who has a company. So this is going to be the first one they're actually going to be promoting. I think that they said that all of Team Canelo is going to be fighting, so expect to see Jaime Munguia on this card, guys like that, everybody on Eddie Reynoso's stable. So I'm expecting almost a similar thing to what we saw in December with the Japan card, where it was all Japanese fighters. That's what it's going to be like here, but instead it's featuring more Mexicans. Everyone's obviously talking about who's he going to fight. It's way too far out to say who it is. If I have to guess, I have to think it's Hamza Shiraz at this moment is what they're thinking. We know that all the belts at 168 are now scattering. Hamza Shiraz has the choice between Diego Pacheco and Christian Billy. It seems like he's going to go the Pacheco route with the WBO. I think he beats Pacheco. He wins that fight on a Saudi card. He's then primed for Canelo. I think Christian Billy likely fights maybe Lester Martinez in a rematch. It looks like Osles Iglesias is going to be fighting Pavel Silyagin, a Russian. They said that the IBF has now approached them to go into negotiations and that they are going to accept the fight. So that looks like that'll be for the vacant IBF. And WBA champion Jose Armando Resendiz looks like he's going to be defending against Jaime Munguia. So the winner of that fight will probably also be featured on this card, as it's an all-Mexican war. So, lots of interesting potentials for that return. I'm glad that he's still fighting on Mexican Independence Day weekend, but noticeably it's not going to be in Vegas for another time. I was going to say the second time in a row, and I guess it is because he's not fighting in May for Cinco de Mayo. He did fight there on Mexican Independence Day weekend in 2025 when he fought Crawford, but he did not fight there in May on Cinco de Mayo. So actually about to go. If he doesn't fight Cinco de Mayo in 2027, that'll be the third year in a row he doesn't fight there on that date. Vegas still gets big boxing. You had Inoue last year. You're going to get Benavidez Zurdo this year. But anyways, let's talk about the fights we had this weekend. Tszyu versus Zerafa. What was that? And look, I don't want to get on Zerafa too much because I always want to give the fighter the benefit of the doubt. And I want to say, look, if you can't see, if you don't think that you're safe to continue, and, if it hurts bad, then I get it. Why would you risk your life out there for what? To get another name on your record when you're probably just going to lose anyways. I will say that was turning into a great fight, and I thought Zerafa was very much in it. I had a 1 round apiece, I'm pretty sure. So I thought it was turning into a very good matchup in the first 2 rounds, and then from that point on, Zerafa comes out for the third, and he's like, I can't see. And this is where it gets controversial. He tells the doctor, I can't see. And then immediately they interview him after the fight, and they ask him, like, okay, how you doing? He's like, I can see perfectly fine. I don't know why they stopped the fight. And the interviewers kind of looks like, okay, I'm in a tough position here. And he's like, I don't want to push on him, but, like, we all just saw you say I can't see. So you're not only are you kind of quitting, which is, again, you can maybe get some respect for that. And he's saying, like, why is everyone booing me? But it's more so that you lied. That's my bigger issue. Not that you quit because you had an eye cut and it doesn't look bad. That's another thing. It does not look bad at all. But more so, why are you, telling the doctor on TV, I can't see, and then coming out and acting like you didn't just say that? So I don't know. It's probably all spur of the moment, but everyone is pissed. Nikita Tszyu is pissed. We're not sure if they even want to do a rematch. They're so mad about it. It looked like the promoters were pretty pissed. George Rose, when they asked him to talk after, he was like, "We'll talk about it tomorrow." He's like, he didn't even know what to say. I've heard that the broadcasters are pissed. The Australian crowd was infuriated, and apparently they were throwing cans into the ring, which I think is far too far. But that just shows, like, dang, like they were really, really pissed. They spent a lot of money. They're excited for this. So definitely a huge disappointment. And this really could hurt Michael Zerafa's career a lot. Like, who knows if we see him back? No Limit may drop him. I've heard rumors of that. I've also heard a rumor that Fox Sports Australia is going to ban him from ever fighting on their TV again, which I'm like, okay, I don't know how much I believe that. But we'll see, dude. I mean, it is a crazy, crazy time in Australian boxing. That was one of the biggest moments in Australian boxing ever, and we'll see the fallout of it. I'm sure we'll hear more, but it's just wild. I would like for them to reschedule a rematch. I would, just because we rarely get to see anything. It seemed like it was going to be a good fight, but who knows if we get that. Also on the card, Dempsey McKean got a 7th-round finish after Tois Vuisitu took him very far into that fight. He really gave him a good go for it. Unfortunately, it didn't last long. Actually, no, sorry, lasted long, but didn't go his way. Went the way we expected, which was a McKean stoppage. But, not the best performance for McKean. The pro debut of Nelson Asofa Solomana, who had a first-round knockout. I mean, it just shows you power can get you pretty far. The guy who was fighting was also not very good. And to be honest, Big Nas, he didn't look great either. He's a debutant. He's a crossover fighter. But, we'll see. He'll probably have another fight in 6 months or so, and we'll see if he's improved. But he even said he wasn't overly impressed with himself. Stevan Ivic and Liam Taliva had a very, very good fight. Really close. Ivic won it by split decision, I think. Majority decision. Close fight. Can't really complain with that. I was only able to see the highlights. I will say from the highlights, I thought Taliva kind of did pretty well, but, I wasn't able to watch all 30 minutes of the fight, so I can't accurately give a scorecard for it. But from the highlights, I thought that it looked very competitive. Liam Wilson, 4th-round body shot KO. I thought Piala was actually pretty competitive in there with him for a good bit, but, it went the way of Liam Wilson, of course. And, yeah, I enjoyed that card. Again, I just wish No Limit could get a real broadcast deal, because watching the highlights is just not optimal. I'd rather watch the actual fight the whole way through, and be able to watch it live would be great. This one was literally on DAZN in New Zealand, nowhere else in the world. Makes no sense. Speaking of DAZN, we had what may be the final ever Golden Boy on DAZN card, headlined by Curiel versus Panthen. Look, Jordan Panthen, when I made my last episode, we didn't even know Raul Curiel was going to have a replacement opponent. I assumed he wasn't going to fight. And then Jordan Panthen, they step him up from the undercard. He's usually a 154, 160 pounder. This fight's at a catch weight of, I believe, around, it was 156, 157. So Curiel comes up against a bigger guy, and, I got to give it to Panthen. He did a great job in the first half of that fight. Second half, Curiel kind of runs away with it. But first half, Panthen gave it a great effort. I had him winning the first, or 2 of the first 4 rounds of the fight. So, my final scorecard was 98-92 for Curiel. A lot of other people had it much closer. I just thought that he was really doing a good job of keeping the fight at a distance where Curiel he wasn't comfortable with and didn't know how to get to him. He really just didn't know how to get to Panthen. And I think he was actually boxing pretty well and was very aggressive. And then the aggression just kind of switched, where it was Curiel chasing down Panthen, and he was really, Panthen wasn't moving around as much and was getting hit a lot more. And that's, eventually what turned the tide. And Curiel takes over in the second half of the fight. But, yeah, I thought it was actually a decent fight. For 24 hours notice, Golden Boy had a really good save. As for where we go from there, Panthen gets a lot of respect. Not a win, but a lot of respect. Curiel, not his best performance. He says he'll be down for an Alexis Roach rematch. I would love to still see that. I'm just kind of worried that that's like a cursed fight at this point, because we just cannot seem to get it going. It's like the second or third time it's been canceled. The first time it's been announced and canceled, but we know they tried to have it happen a couple times last year and never came to fruition. But, it is what it is. We'll see if they're able to get anything going. Curiel's got a lot of good options at 147. It's actually becoming a very interesting division, and he could walk into a title shot pretty soon. He's very, very good. So, yeah, I would love to see him fight Rocha, but we'll see what happens. Co-main event, Jorge Chavez defeats Manny Flores in what was a much better fight than the first. The first was still good, but this was a great, great fight. And Chavez had to come from behind victory. I had him winning the fight 96-94. I gave Flores the first 3 rounds, and it seems like seemed like, damn, like Flores is just outboxing him, and he's just, before he started a little bit too late in that fight. Here he was getting right on it from the get-go, making this a war, which Chavez said he didn't want to have to get into a war again, and Flores made it a war, and Chavez just looked uncomfortable and smaller and didn't know how to deal with it, and then just kind of turns up and is able to, and Flores himself kind of slowed down, and Chavez just made the fight at a more controllable distance and made it kind of a war too. He didn't take it easy. He went in on him. And from that point on, I mean, I gave Chavez around 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Wait, did I not? Okay, actually, no, sorry. I did not give him round 6. I was going to say, that math doesn't add up. I gave Flores round 6, but definitely last few rounds of the fight was all Chavez. Very impressive win. And look, I feel like after that fight, he's kind of graduated from prospect to contender status. 122, these lower weight divisions, it doesn't take long to get you to a title shot. So he gets a couple more good wins, and he's right there. He says he wants Inoue next, which, like, you're not going to get Inoue, and you shouldn't fight Inoue. But, pretty soon he could find himself into a very highly ranked, eliminator for, like, a number 2 spot maybe. Who knows? But, yeah, very good win for him, and Flores now has his second loss of his pro career. Other than that, we were meant to get Joel Iriarte on the card. That did not end up happening. His opponent, named Jire De Los Santos, backs out right before the fight's about to happen, saying that he had, apparently Iriarte came in overweight, and De Los Santos said that he had a dream from God, and God told him that he shouldn't fight. It's not safe. And because of that, he backs out of the fight last minute. Look, I don't want to say anything about anybody's religion and whatever. And if you feel like this is not safe, I shouldn't be fighting this guy who didn't follow the rules, then I get that. But it does kind of feel like that's a last minute, I got nervous and I'm pulling out. I'm just saying. So we'll see. I really feel for Iriarte because he wanted to fight, but there's also proves, dude, don't miss weight. Come on, be a professional. So hopefully we get to see him back in action soon. I thought Ruslan Abdullayev looked fantastic, getting a 5th round stoppage. He very much needed another knockdown another TKO in his career, and he looks very, very promising as of right now. And then good wins for Scrappy Ramirez on the prelims. He looks solid. Caden Griffiths went the distance for the first time, but gained some good experience doing so. Tough guy he was in with Fabian Guzman, 6th round stoppage. Now 9-0, 8 KOs, and then Ricardo Ruvalcaba goes the distance, but another dominant win. So good Golden Boy show overall. A lot of decisions, not a lot of knockouts, but that's okay. Something to note from this is this may be the last DAZN card. We know apparently this is the end of their deal, and what comes out really interesting is just the day of the fight, or maybe the day before, we find out Vergil Ortiz is preparing a lawsuit because he's trying to terminate his Golden Boy contract early, essentially claiming that because their deal with DAZN is up, then he's able to get out of it because, they don't actually have a deal, and that was very contingent on their deal extension that he signed with them in 2024. Now, Golden Boy is arguing back, saying, no, we have been in firm negotiations since October. We already have the material aspect of the deal set. It was really just dependent on their re-signing, on their renewal was dependent on Golden Boy being able to deliver the Boots Ennis fight. We also find out that apparently Vergil wanted $7 million for Boots, which I think is, we know boxers get paid a lot. I think Vergil could earn that at some point, but that's a big ask. I don't want to say it's overly big ask because I'm like, dude, if this is a pay-per-view fight, I wouldn't be mad if they got paid that much, but him demanding that when there's no turkey behind this fight, it's just Oscar and Eddie, it is a lot of money. And it wouldn't surprise me if they're just like, no, we're not moving. So Oscar, is nothing against Vergil. He does not like his promoter. He does not like his lawyer. So he's fighting back on it, and he's saying, no. And I think that this is very interesting because I'm just saying we don't see a lot of other fighters suing their promoters while they're still their promoters. But we've seen it with Canelo and Oscar, and we haven't seen this lawsuit, I don't think, but we have seen Ryan Garcia and Oscar have back and forths while they're still promoting each other. So I don't know. I think Oscar's a great promoter, but he definitely does not. He's not always on the right foot with his fighters. Other than that, Rocky Hernandez was meant to fight this weekend. Last minute, he is deemed unfit to fight that night by the Mexico Commission, saying that he had some injury with his eye or something, which is apparently this is not the first time he's had eye issues. So definitely needs to get that figured out because that could be bad for his career and feels like he's, losing a lot of momentum right now. He's about to spend over a year out of the ring now that he didn't get this, kind of comeback fight in. But it is what it is. We had BKFC 86 in the Mohegan Sun. Justin Paige beat Julian Lane. They actually went the 6th overtime round, which I found interesting. I had Paige up at that point, but then they go because he had a first-round knockdown, which is great, and I thought that he won the first 3 rounds of the fight, and then the last 2 go to Lane. They go to the overtime round because, 2 of the judges had it a draw, and then Lane gets that one for me, but on some of the judges, they gave it to Paige. So Paige wins the fight by unanimous decision in the end. So actually, at least 2 of them gave him the round. So it is what it is. I still had it 57-56, same as the judges did. But yeah, and new welterweight champion. Phenomenal fight. Hope they run it back. I think that's the plan. What a way to kick off 2026 for BKFC. They're saying it's going to be a big year. I want to believe them. They got to announce a Newcastle card on March 14th, and they're going to be in Hawaii on April 11th, which is hopefully going to be a big card. Hawaii is a place that I think you could have a lot of fun and really entertaining fighters from, and no promotions really go there in boxing or MMA, so it's cool to see BKFC breaking into these new territories in combat sports. So looking forward to that. I thought Jamel Herring looked awesome in his bare-knuckle debut. He won that fight 50-43 across the board, dominated Matt Goyman, and I think that Jamel Herring can have a lot of success in bare-knuckle just because of his superior boxing skill compared to a lot of the other guys in that promotion. These are MMA fighters. They're brawlers. They're not, polished boxers like he is. So I think he's able to get around really easily with a lot of these guys. What is really going to become a question is the first time he gets in there with someone who is a brawler. Because Goyman didn't really try and take his head off. He comes in there and he gets into his first bare-knuckle brawl where it's a bloodbath. That's when we're going to see what he's made of. But I thought he looked awesome. He even responded to my tweet, which was sick. But yeah, so I thought that he looked really good. Ramiro Figueroa had a unanimous decision win as well. A fair amount of decision wins. Rico DeShulo, big stoppage. There was a big, where was it on the card? Somebody had a big comeback from behind. Oh, yeah, it was Ross Hilton. He was down big. He had been dropped down. He'd been knocked down 3 times in that fight. And then into the 5th and final round, I think he drops his opponent twice, Branko Usyk, and then Usyk is just done, and he doesn't get up with 10 seconds left, and I was like, wow, that is an incredible comeback, and I saw he was getting a little bit of love on social media, so doing some numbers. So we'll see. He could be a potential new heavyweight for them. Guillermo Viana as well had a round 1 stoppage, very easy fight for him. It was overall a decent night at the Mohegan Sun. Next bare knuckle card is Knucklemania, which I cannot wait for because those nights are always fun. All right, let's talk about some other news, and let's talk about it. Zuffa Boxing. Holy shit. They had their real launch for me on Friday evening. That's where they dropped their first promo with Dana White. I thought that was a pretty sick promo. Very well done. They talk about their first main card. It's been announced, including the prelims now. It does look like for these fights, we are not going to be having the typical weight classes we see now. Dana White said he wants to do fewer weight classes. He wants to return to the, old classic weight divisions, not the super or junior stuff. So, Callum Walsh versus Carlos Ocampo, your main event is going to be at middleweight, 160 pounds. They're not doing 154, which Walsh and Ocampo are. So they're having to make the move up there. On this card, you'll see middleweight fights. You'll see welterweight, featherweight, bantamweight, lightweight, but no super lightweight, no super welterweight, no super featherweight, nothing like that. But as for this card, I think it's a decent start. So only 3 fights on the main card. Misael Rodriguez versus Austin Deonda, who are 2 undefeated fighters. That should be a good fight. The one that I'm most excited for is the welterweight fight opening it up. Julian Rodriguez versus Cain Sandoval. Cain Sandoval, an undefeated 140-pounder who has, he's got a lot of power. I think he's like 15-0, 13 KO, something crazy like that. Really exciting to watch. And then Julian Rodriguez came off of a great win over Avius Griffin where he upset him on the MVP show last summer, stopped him in the final round. That was a phenomenal fight. So that one is a 50-50 fight for me. That is by far the best fight on this card and the one I'm most looking forward to. And I actually think, looking at this, Zuffa Boxing, they do kind of get it. There's a lot of undefeated versus undefeated fights on this card. Opening it up, you get Troy Nash versus Jacob Ramos and Robert Merriweather III versus Cesar Correa. I believe all those guys are undefeated. So they're not doing I was looking at this and, I recognize some names, not others. For example, Floyd Diaz is going to fight Guillermo Gutierrez. Don't know Gutierrez, but I looked at his record. I think he only has 1 or 2 losses. These really are well-matched fights. You have Emiliano Cardenas versus Marcus Harris, and then main eventing the prelims is Omar Trinidad versus Max Ornelas. Ornelas was supposed to fight Abdullah Mason last year. I think he's a decent fighter, but I would hope that Trinidad can get past him and beat him. That's what I would expect. A little bit interesting. They're only doing 3 fights on the main card, and Trinidad Ornelas is not on the main card as well, which is also a 10-rounder. But it is what it is. This is a solid start for them. The tickets are ridiculously overpriced. It's like the cheapest ones are $270, and I know it's the Apex. I know it's a kind of like a VIP experience because there's not a bad seat in there. You're right in front of the ring, but none of the fights on this card warrant that much money to be spent on it. It's not that good of a card. But for me, by far the most interesting part of this whole week, and the thing I waited to talk about the most, is Jai Opetaia getting signed. We know Zuffa Boxing had talked about, we're going to sign some big names. We're going to sign mostly up-and-coming guys, which we're seeing on this card. I thought Callum Walsh and F.A. Ajagba were pretty big gets for them early on. We knew Walsh would be with them, but F.A. Ajagba, I was surprised at that. And then they just dropped this, that they have signed the number 1 cruiserweight in the world, one of Eddie Hearn's crown jewels, who it seems like I saw somebody point out that Jai's last fight was on a Tasman Fighter show that was not on DAZN. It was not a co-promotion with Matchroom. And they didn't promote it at all. So maybe he hasn't actually been with Jai for a little bit and their deal was over. But at first I thought that Jai was still in contract with Eddie, found a way to get out of it, or was at the end of it and was going to renew, and then goes with Zuffa Boxing instead. Now, this is huge for Zuffa Boxing to get a huge star from Australia, maybe the most famous and definitely the best cruiserweight in the world right now, sign him there. Now, again, only doing the original divisions. I don't know if cruiserweight is included in there. I think it should because, you don't want to jump from light heavyweight straight up to heavyweight. I think there should be something in between. But if not, Jai could make the move to heavyweight, which he would be successful at. But, to sign him, I think is huge. The only question is, Jai makes his video saying, I'm signing with Zuffa Boxing. Let's get these big fights. Unification's undisputed too. And I'm like, hold up. This is the same Zuffa Boxing who has said we're not going to work with sanctioning bodies. We're not going to do that. We're not going to work with other promoters. And then, Tasman Fighters and Gold Star, posting about Jai signing with Zuffa. So I was like, okay, so are you still signed with them and Zuffa Boxing? I thought Dana wasn't doing that. And that, I think, is not as important. But the main thing that's important is Jai Opetaia seems to have a fundamental misunderstanding of what contract he just entered into. Because if he thinks, I'm IBF Ring Magazine champion, I'm going to go in Zuffa Boxing because they're the UFC, they know how to do things, they're going to go and get me Zerto. They're going to give him the money. They're going to go and get me Noel McKaylee, and I'm going to become undisputed. No. You just kissed all that goodbye. If you want to go to Zuffa Boxing and you want to be the face of this new company, which you now are, and you want to become Zuffa Boxing champion, you can do that. You should be talking about Zuffa Boxing champion. But unless Zuffa Boxing is just straight up not what they said they're going to be and is going to be a traditional boxing organization, I have to think that Jai is not going to be fighting the other champions and is going to have to vacate his IBF in case otherwise the IBF will strip him. And so, I think this is a huge blow to Matchroom and is definitely a huge shocker for the boxing world because I always thought once the first person makes that big move, we're going to start to see a ripple effect. And I wasn't expecting anyone to make that move for a long time. I really wasn't. I thought it would be someone younger who's coming up, who's very promising, would be world champion. Someone like Kermel Moten making the move there and becoming a star. That's where it'd be like, okay. But taking a current world champion, the current number 1, the current Ring Magazine champion for an important division and bring him into the organization is unbelievably huge for Dana White's Zuffa Boxing. And what a big start. And, kind of a big blow to the traditional boxing world. I mean, Hearn is furious, talking about he can't lace my boots, and then he steals away one of your top fighters. So, I'm really, really curious to see where this story goes. I'm curious if he does end up vacating his IBF, if he's just saying unification is undisputed because those are buzzwords he's used to promote it for the longest time, or if he actually doesn't know what he just signed. Or if Zuffa Boxing is not true and they are going to allow him to do unifications and such, and he's going to be defending his IBF title on their show. Who knows? Okay, moving on from there, let's talk about White House. Jorge Masvidal talking about big news coming up soon, and people are starting to think, is he talking about Conor McGregor? We know Conor McGregor, Michael Chandler is no longer the move with Dana White, and we know that they're going to want to give Conor a big fight. Now, Jorge Masvidal has been wanting to return to the UFC. And he has been wanting to fight on this White House card. Now, McGregor and Masvidal are two guys that they're big names, and when you want to have McGregor's comeback fight, you don't want him to go in with a top welterweight or even a lightweight. You don't want them to ever. You don't want him to go and fight Islam Makhachev. You don't even want him to go in there and fight someone like Ian Gary or Carlos Praches, somebody who's still a highly ranked guy, just because that's not what you do. You don't have him come in and fight someone who's in their prime who can beat him. You have him come in to have him fight a big name and somebody he can beat. Now, who's somebody he's never fought, that there's a little bit of animosity there, that would do a fantastic job selling the fight, who wants to be on this card, who wants to make his return? They're both in the same situation. Jorge Masvidal. I think that this is a perfect fight they could do. Nate Diaz is another one I think is perfect for McGregor's comeback, but I would be more than happy if it was McGregor versus Masvidal. Masvidal says it's in early negotiations. He says that they're talking about it a little bit. I think Conor's even said that it's looking like it could be Masvidal. It wouldn't surprise me at all if this is the play that they're making. So we'll see. We'll see what they end up doing with it. But, yeah, I'm very, very much interested in that being the fight, and I'd love to see it. Ilia Topuria has said that he will fight in April to June, so it looks like he's not going to be out of the ring for a whole year like a lot of us were worried about. He'll be back soon enough, and he is going to be wanting to fight the winner of Patty versus Justin this weekend, which is only expected. It's who he's going to have to fight, as they are going to be the interim champion. I think that, I don't know. I just feel so bad for Arman Tsarukyan. That's all I really can say, because he deserves it more. It should be Ilya versus Arman, and screw the interim title. But, Arman's just going to have to sit out and wait for a long time. Maybe he takes another top 5 fight. I don't know. But it is what it is. We'll see which way the cookie crumbles. I would expect, if he's saying April to June, that the UFC will try and get him on that White House card, as he is one of the biggest stars in the sport. And you have to let the winner of Patty and Justin, recover. They're not going to be ready by April, I would assume. And you got other champions you can throw in. But we'll see. It's good, just good to know that he has a timeline to return. Okay, let's talk about the Ring Awards. We'll just go through it quickly and what I think. The Prospect of the Year nominations. This is one that's a little bit of a hard one to think about this year. And, you don't have the obvious ones like Moses Talma and Abdullah Mason. They're not really prospects anymore. But 4 Prospects of the Year. Emiliano Vargas, who may get it because he's just fantastic. Reito Tsutsumi. Ring ambassador, only ever fought on those shows, as is John Arobio. Those are both ring ambassadors, but they're both fantastic. Ben Whitaker, I don't love that. He's not a prospect anymore. And, he's controversial, even though he did have a good comeback here. And then Pat Brown, who made his big debut, and he's gone up the ranks. I would probably say you could give it to Vargas. Really, I don't know. I'm going to assume they're going to give it to Tsutsumi. Maybe Vargas. If Vargas is there, that's when we'll know. I think Vargas deserves it more than Tsutsumi, but it wouldn't surprise me if they just gave it to their guy. As for Trainer of the Year, they nominated Manny Robles, Robert Garcia, Rudy Hernandez, Shingo Inoue, and Bomac. You can choose a lot of these guys. I think it would either have to be Inoue or Robert Garcia. You can always vote him. I think he's probably the best trainer in the sport right now. Upset of the Year nominations: Rolly Romero over Ryan Garcia, Echo Esman over Josh Taylor, Armando Resendiz over Caleb Plant, Ricardo Sandoval over Kenshiro Taraji, and Fabio Wardley over Joseph Parker. Wardley over Parker was a big upset, but that was still a competitive fight headed in, kind of. I would have to say Armando Resendiz over Caleb Plant, or Rolly over Ryan. Both huge wins and both very impressive, but Resendiz over Caleb Plant. Nobody thought he was going to beat Caleb Plant. Absolutely no one. So that's him, my pick. But this is also going to be a very Riyadh Season Ring Magazine biased show, I would assume. Wouldn't surprise me if they do give it to Rollies. That was on a Saudi show. As for Round of the Year, Smith versus Buatsi, round 6. Hrgovic versus Adelaide, round 8. Phenomenal round. That actually may be my pick. Seiya Tsutsumi, Daigo Higa, round 9, another great pick. Taraji versus Kui, round 12, which was a good round, but a controversial stoppage. I think round 7 of the fight was the one that everyone was saying that's the best round. And then Eubank versus Ben 1, round 12. All good picks there. Knockout of the Year, Brian Norman Jr., Fabio Wardley over Justice Hooney, Bam Rodriguez over Puma Martinez, Usyk over Dubois, oh my gosh, and then Frank Martins. Phenomenal knockout to close out the year. For me, it's Brian Norman Jr., and he'll probably win it. I think that's pretty unanimously agreed upon that he won it. So all those nominations make sense. For Female Fighter of the Year, huge snub. So Ellie Scottney, yes. Katie Taylor, yeah, only one win, but good. Michaela Mayer, yes. Mizuki Haruta, a lot of activity, sure. Evelyn Bermudez, don't even know who that is. But How is Elif Nurturhan not on this list? I didn't even consider her. I wasn't thinking about her when I did my end of the year picks, but she probably is the fighter of the year for 2025. She was phenomenal. Huge rise in winning a title and an interim title in another division and just knocking everyone out so easily. I think her not even getting a nomination is crazy. But we'll see who they give it to. And then fight of the year. Beterbiev Bivol 2, Eubank Ben 1. That's it for me. Inoue Cardenas, Taraji Akui. Good to see that that's getting shouted out. Inoue Cardenas, another one that people weren't talking about, but it is. And then Mason versus Noakes. Smith versus Buatsi, not on the list, which I think some people expected, but I'm okay with it. And then male fighter of the year, Bivol, Bud, Bam. Inoue, Wardley. Wardley a little bit one some people were surprised about, but he had a great year. I don't hate it. For me, it's Bud. Other people maybe Inoue. I would say Bivol before Bam, even if Bam did have a good year, and he's going to win it many years in the future. But, yeah, we'll see who they give it to. I'm guessing there's going to be a lot of bias to Saudi shows, but that's okay. All right, now we're on from that. Let's talk about some other stuff because we still have plenty more to talk about. WBA downgrading Tank to champion in recess. Obviously, he's got an arrest warrant out for him. He's not going to be defending the title. It's been almost a year since his last defense. You just have to assume that they were going to have to do this at some point. We don't even know if Tank's going to fight again. So glad to see the WBA is not always just because I feel like they've always been on Tank's side no matter what with everything. And so glad to see they're standing their ground and just saying, nope, we're not doing it. We're hearing that Floyd Schofield is ranked number 1. He will be fighting for the vacant title, and it's going to either be between him and Lucas Badi or Lamont Roach. Now, I think that Lamont Roach is the better fight if Roach is fighting at 135. He could be at 140 still, so he's going to have to decide. If he does decide to stay at 140, maybe rematch Pitbull, then you do the Lucas Badi fight. Still a good one, but Schofield versus Roach is definitely the better matchup. I think both those guys definitely beat Lucas Badi. Let's talk about Usyk versus Wilder. So we thought this fight was getting announced last week by this new IVB Boxing. They had this big press conference, and then we find out what it really is. So IVB Boxing announces a groundbreaking YouTube broadcast deal. So maybe it'll be on pay-per-view, maybe it won't. I don't know, but they're going to do 12 worldwide events aiming to break the boxing attendance record in San Francisco on July 11th, and that is when they were hoping to have the Usyk versus Wilder fight. And they want to have like 150,000 people there, which is a very ambitious goal. And apparently a lot of the tickets would be free. I don't know how they would do it. It seems very ambitious, and I feel like a lot of people are talking about it, but also nobody's talking about it. But what's most interesting is Usyk versus Wilder. Both teams have now come out and said that this is not true. Wilder's team, Shelly Finkel, has says we've never even heard of this Ed Pereira guy who's the CEO or promoter behind it. We haven't had any talks with them. And then Usyk's team they haven't said they haven't had any talks, but they said that there's no agreement and that they're just using Usyk's name to, hype up, drum up interest and stuff, and just using his name to kind of boost their product. So I think it's really interesting. They're trying to promote using Usyk and Wilder as the fight that they're going to make happen when it's not at all close to happening, and both teams are saying, that's not happening. So really, really interesting. Let's see if where that goes. Fabio Wardley says that Derek Chisora is the front runner for his first title defense. Chisora, we got to get him a fight because that guy wants to retire. We were hoping it was going to be one. Was it going to be Dillian White? Yeah. That's what it seemed like he was probably going to be. It was Dillian White in December. Then that just didn't happen. A lot of options for Chisora, but I'm really not sure what it ends up being. I would not hate this. I don't think Chisora necessarily deserves a title shot, but if he wants to go out on one, all British fight, have him sacrificed to a potential big British heavyweight champion, already a British heavyweight champion in Fabio Wardley, then that's what you do. And I'm okay with that. Good fight. I would definitely have Wardley beating him, but Chisora, that guy's tough to get out of there. So we'll see. But yeah, that seems like it's possible. What Wardley did say is that a Moses Itauma fight is an impossibility as they both are trained by Ben Davison. We got to change that because that is a huge fight for British boxing, for world boxing, and you can't have two top dogs in the same gym forever. You can't be doing that. Eventually, y'all are gonna have to go somewhere else because we got to see that happen. At some point, we're gonna need that fight. Speaking of Queensberry heavyweights, Daniel Dubois, Zhilei Zhang is a potential. Zhang is saying that he wants that fight, and Frank Warren says he wants to make it. Look, what I think the British not even just British, what the world heavyweight division needs to be doing is not waiting until you get a shot at the title. Everyone's waiting right now. They're all waiting for their big fight. No. What we need to be doing is, in the meantime, all fight each other. Like, why is Lawrence Okoli fighting Ebenezer Tete? Why is Agit Kabayel fighting Damian Neba? No. Why isn't Agit Kabayel fighting Lawrence Okoli? Why doesn't Daniel Dubois fight Zhile Zhang? What, like, again, when Joseph Parker fought Fabio Worley, I was so happy because I'm like, yes, you don't have to fight the number one or the number two guy, but you can fight each other to get into that position. Ifeya Jogba is leaving, but he fought Martin Bakoli. That was a good fight. And now he's going to go and fight Charles Martin, and Bakoli's probably going to go fight Dillian White or something lame like that. Like, no, we need to have top 10 heavyweights fighting each other, and if they're able to make Dubois Zhang, that could be a pay-per-view in the UK, make it happen. Come on. Alois Jr. has withdrawn from his mandatory position for the British title fight versus Vidal Riley. Really interested in that. They also say, though, we've got reasons. We'll explain why. We've got a different plan for Alois that we'll be announcing shortly. I'm very keen to hear what that other plan is because I think you may have just made a big fumble and you definitely just, shot Vidal's smack talk and ego up a mountain. So let's see if they made the right call with that decision to back out of the title negotiations, but I really wanted to see that fight. So definitely a shame, and we'll see what their new plan is. The UFC announced that Josh Emmett versus Kevin Vallejos is going to be headlining the UFC Vegas 114 card on March 14th. Pretty good fight. I don't know about it as a main event, but I'll take it. Josh Emmett, obviously always a game gatekeeper. And then you've got Kevin Vallejos, who is always fought on the Apex, but he has been on a really, really fun rise and a tear coming through this division at featherweight, and he's now ranked. So I think this is a pretty good top 15 matchup. I'm going to be behind Vallejos to get the win. I think he does it, but yeah, really excited to see that one. Speaking of UFC, Muhammad Usman has gotten a 30-month ban for a testosterone violation, which is crazy, but I'm not even really surprised. Have you looked at the guy? He's just pure muscle, and 2.5-year ban is wild. I think that he's already in his later 30s, so I don't know if we'll see him fight again, or at least not in that part of the world or MMA. I'm not sure what exactly his ban is, if it's from fighting in the U.S., if it's from fighting in a certain other region, if it's from fighting in the UFC, or if it's from fighting in MMA at all, then we'll see. But yeah, really, really interesting, and not a good time for the Usman family. Kamaru Usman posting that video of AJ. Where they're having a private conversation, just posted it on Twitter. I thought that was pretty crazy. But let's talk about some undercard news, or some card news, really. Emmanuel Navarrete, Sugar Nunez, that undercard has been announced. So we're going to have the co-main event, Tamir Smalls versus Abel Ramos. Really interesting matchup. Tamir Smalls, all of a sudden, is just stepping up each and every fight. He fought Jose Roman. I thought that may be a step too far. And then he beats him. And then Abel Ramos here. Ramos is a former world title challenger. He went the distance with Mario Barrios on Netflix. That was a draw. Close fight. Great fight. And now he's going to be fighting Tamir Smalls. So Tamir Smalls not going for the faint of heart. He's going for the top and trying to get big fights. And I actually really like that matchup. And that's going to be a war, so really curious who comes out on top of that one. It could go either way. Emiliano Vargas as well. He's stepping up. He's going to be fighting, I don't know what the guy's actual first name is, but Quintan. I'm going to check on it here. But, yeah, Emiliano Vargas making his Matchroom debut, I guess. Obviously, this is still kind of a top-ranked card as, you got Emmanuel Navarrete in the main event, but they've got no TV deal, and they got to keep their guys active. So I'm glad this is Emiliano Vargas' second fight since the end of the ESPN era. He's going to be fighting Agustin Quintana, who's 22-2-1, another 10-rounder for him. And then also on the card, on the main card, you're going to have Arturo Cardenas back in action. He's going to be fighting Jordan Martinez, who's 16-0. Cardenas was really impressive to me last time out. So, yeah, decent card, 4 good, hopefully exciting main card fights. And we'll see what else they got up their sleeve on their calendar. But, yeah, I'm looking forward to that one. Now let's talk about Queensberry. They announced a smaller show going to be headlined by Owen Cooper versus Konstantin Ursu. Is going to be for the British and Commonwealth welterweight championships, which, I think this is a really, really good matchup. Both these guys are fun to watch. They're going to be in a fun fight together. And they announced some of the undercard stuff. It's going to be, they're calling it Under the Lights, so I think it's going to be more of a prospect type show. So we're going to have Luke McCormack versus Kane Gardner, so a step up for him, and then Ben Fale as well, fighting Mason Cartwright. One thing on BoxRec, right now they have Cooper versus Ursu listed as a 10-rounder when it should be a 12. I'm not sure if it stays that way or what's going on, but just something interesting. And then Eye of the Tiger announced, that's on February 28th, by the way. On March 15th or March 5th, we're gonna have the return of Stephen Butler in Canada, as he is gonna be fighting Ramadan Hisseni, who obviously just upset Alexandre Gomon. That's a really fun matchup. I like that they're giving Hisseni another opportunity. Stephen Butler, taking on a tougher fight. You're gonna have Lenar Perez, 15-0 cruiserweight. He's gonna be fighting Isaac Chilemba. John Arobio returning on that card versus Yomar Alamo. Good step up for him. Steve Claggett back in action. Moreno Fendero. And then Christopher Guerrero as well. He's going to be fighting Samuel Jaime Rodriguez, who is 12-0. So really good matchups, always from Eye of the Tiger. And yeah, I like that card a lot. I like Butler Hisseni. Some other news. Amari Jones apparently has been added to the Barrios versus Garcia card. He said, or his promoter said, that he's on it, which glad to see he's staying active. And if they get him on there, that's a big get for Golden Boy to get him on that show. A lot of Golden Boy fighters seem to think it's a Golden Boy card, so they're trying to get on it. So we'll see if he's in a big fight. And then Oscar Duarte says that he's going to be fighting Richardson Hitchens on that date. So it seems like that one is all but announced and that it should be agreed upon and finalized soon, but that's a great fight. And yeah, and then last bit of news, just a bit of an interesting one. We talked about Emiliano Vargas a good bit. His brothers in Las Vegas get into a fight in public, Fernando Jr. and Amato, because apparently Amato slept with Fernando's girlfriend 3 times in 1 week this week, and Fernando was going for his throat. And so that's obviously just crazy in itself, and it's actually wild to sleep with your brother's girlfriend that much. Well, not even like the times matter. It's crazy to do it at all, but the fact that you're continually having an affair with them is just insane, and it's even more so heartbreaking just to see them fighting in public. Like, and meanwhile, Emiliano Vargas is locked in the mountains. I mean, we can tell which one of the brothers is the most talented and the most disciplined and hardworking, and that's Emiliano Vargas by a country mile. So hopefully they can get their shit figured out and they can sort this out, because brothers shouldn't be doing this kind of stuff to each other and they shouldn't be fighting, especially not in public when they're public figures. Really sad to see, but yeah, that's all I've got from today. A longer episode, but it was a big one. Lots to talk about. Next episode is probably going to be Thursday, where we'll preview Zuffa Boxing 1, Raymond Murataya, Andy Cruz, what a fight that is, and then the return of UFC, the big debut on Paramount Plus. Justin Gaethje, Patty Bimblett. No Kayla Amanda anymore, but still a great card. Big weekend coming up in Combat Sports. Very much excited for it. Thank you all so much for listening, and peace out.